My next guest is an expert in cybersecurity at Cylance, Cylance, an artificially intelligence-based threat prevention system. How are you, Jason?
Good, how are you?
Good to see you.
Excellent.
So Jason, for those out there who aren't familiar yet with Cylance, can you talk a little bit broadly about the company itself?
Yeah, so Cylance is a next-generation cybersecurity company focused on bringing artificial intelligence into the security space. So the idea, and we've been successful at, is bringing preventative measures back into security. Because recently, the products that are out there today are not very effective.
Right.
And so there's been a means to be reactive to the threat, which is putting a lot of emphasis on resources and people to be able to hunt inside the environment, detect and find things, and requiring that somebody has to be a patient zero before they're able to find something. So what we've done different with artificial intelligence is actually bring that into a better situation so that we are preventing that first patient zero in the first place.
So how do you do that? How does your technology sort of sniff out the threat?
So it's probably a very complex thing to comprehend, but the reality is what we do is we have in our AI process is we are doing a lot of the heavy lifting outside of the environment, in which case we are running artificial intelligence and machine learning against a sample set of known good, known bad, and essentially from there we are building an algorithm that we can package up and install that on the endpoint, so that the endpoint becomes self-contained and being able to block bad things from starting.
It almost sounds like you're programming a virtual hacker and then learning from that and then creating an opponent to that. Is that not?
So I guess in some context one could look at it that way, but ultimately it's helping us stay ahead of the spear.
Yeah.
So yes, we are predicting through our samples and being able to identify what makes something bad.
Tell me about a success story in the last couple of years that you've had where the technology, the artificial intelligence that you guys have designed has really done its job.
So even with most recent events, the malware like ransomware, WannaCry recently came out. We are getting notices from our clients saying thank you, it has done its job, and they can sleep at night.
When someone is considering choosing a cybersecurity company, there are choices out there, what makes you confident that they need to look at Cylance?
So I think it's because we need to change the way we're doing things.
Yeah.
The adversaries are changing their methods. They are finding new ways to be creative in what it is that they're trying to achieve. And we also need to change the way we deal with security. We have to recognize that some things, if we continue down the path of what we traditionally have done and not try to change the game, then the adversary is always going to have the upper hand.
What makes you passionate about this business?
So I'm passionate about this business. I've actually, from being in the control system world, I have seen the evolution of new advances into bringing connectivity and seeing the deficiencies that are happening in the infrastructure, in the way security is being performed. And so seeing something that's now less gives us breathing room to recognize that, wow, we could do something different and give us the point where we can now change the way we deal with security, but also change the way we're spending and financing security so that we can do other things that are just as effective in increasing the overall ecosystem and our security posture for an organization.
So you're talking about the differentiation there. How is Cylance different from other cybersecurity companies?
It's because of the way we use AI in our process, it's allowed us to change the way even when we look at our services. The way we perform incident response, the way we detect and respond to threats that happen in an environment, whether they're using our product or not. It's allowed us to incorporate a different viewpoint, different tools and mechanisms that allow us to be more effective in how we perform.
If a company is weighing its cybersecurity options, even whether they can work directly with Cylance or not, what are some easy, low-hanging actions that a company can take right now to get itself ready for a cybersecurity solution or just to get themselves ready for the threats that are out there?
Yeah, that's a great question. I guess there's kind of really two ways to look at it. One is to look inward and identify what are we doing wrong and how are we doing things today. And also taking the context of what's going on outside. How are the adversaries changing the way they're doing things? Not only from a ransomware type of attack, but also from control systems and the advancements they're making beyond ransomware. And taking those two approaches and mirroring them together to develop a newer security model for the organization.
What's the craziest ransomware story you've heard so far?
So, I guess I don't really want to say any specific one.
Sure.
They're all crazy. I mean, the reality is that's the worst time for an organization to know whether their backups and the recovery mechanisms are working.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Have you seen, maybe not even in your clientele, but industry-wide, a ransomware hack happens, you destroy the encrypted files, but then the company realizes, oh no, our backups don't even exist?
It has closed doors in bankrupt companies.
Really?
Yes.
Oh, that's terrible.
Yeah, it is. It's an unfortunate reality.
So do you also provide backup services?
No.
But you suggest?
We suggest strongly a backup service
Right.
that is proven to be effective against ransomware.
Let's talk about those then. Again, there are people watching this who may never get to meet with you one-on-one. There are other people whose companies may not be the size or structure that needs a company like yours. But what would you advise a company to do if they're beginning to look at either refining or beginning their backup services, their backup procedures? Where should they look?
So the first thing, and so I take on any kind of assessment, is truly understand what your critical systems and your critical data is.
Yeah.
And taking a look at how you can build a backup solution that truly segments itself from your active infrastructure. Because one of the things that ransomware, if there's many ways you can do a backup. The last thing you want is ransomware to encrypt your backups.
Sorry, what'd you say?
You don't want your ransomware to encrypt backup.
Encrypt backup. Oh,
Right.
boy.
Yeah.
Is that what has happened in some of the more terrible
Yes,
cases?
in some instances, just because it's not taken, the backup systems were developed potentially likely at a time when ransomware wasn't of the biggest concern for that particular organization.
Gosh. And so again, we're speaking somewhat theoretically, but in the case of some companies that have had to close their doors because of this, do they end up paying the ransom or do they end up not paying the ransom and not being able to access their data?
So in a lot of cases in like that is they can't afford to pay the ransom,
Right.
but they can't get back the data that they need to make their business successful.
Do they then say to the kidnappers, look, we're a very small firm, how's half the money? I mean, do they try and bargain?
There is actually a process that you can negotiate. The reality is these adversaries are operating as a business.
Yeah.
This isn't just a bunch of people in their basement throwing things out there. It is a business model developed around it, just with measurement, everything that any business would do.
Wow.
Customer support.
U.S. based or usually foreign?
The reality is we don't really know where they are. And if anything, they'd likely be in a country that would be somewhat difficult to
extradite or,
Yes.
Well, this has been a fascinating conversation. Jason, if people want to stay up to speed with you and with Cylance, how can they stay in touch and perhaps begin to work with you?
So I'd say the best thing is go to our website, cylance.com.
Yeah.
And from there, they can leverage off and get in touch with us if they have an incident and they need to deal with it right away.
Yeah.
Or if they want to be proactive, which I think everybody wants to be, and they can get in touch with us to get in touch with the right person.
Terrific. Jason Dely, Cylance, thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you.
Pleasure.